The smaller the plants, the more you can fit into your home, and if they can take low light condition, that's a huge bonus. So here are 5 plants that can take low light and stay quite small. Hello everybody and welcome to Plantivalo. So let's put this aside. So the first plant I would like to present to you is this one right here, which is Zymbalaria muralis, and it is not a typical house plant. It's from outdoors. Basically, yeah, every plant is from outdoors, I know that, but I haven't seen this plant being grown indoors, and I thought why not, because I really love the leaves of this plant. They look like little clouds, like a child would draw a cloud, and they are just so cute. So outside you can find this plant everywhere in Europe where you can find a dry wall, and this plant is actually really interesting. It has those little seed pods and it actively pushes those seed pods into the nooks and crannies of a wall and propagates like that. And this is a very amazing plant because it can take very low light conditions. It is standing in our bathroom at the moment and receives not a lot of light. It receives more light during the summer. That's why we have some flowers actually going on and also some seed pods. The seed pods are a little bit annoying because then they spread those black seeds everywhere. So if that's a concern for you, keep that in mind. But for me, that's a bonus because I can propagate this plant very easily through seeds. Now this plant can actually take a huge range of different light conditions. It can also be grown in full sunlight as it does outside. The leaves will get much smaller and more leathery and more tough, whereas when you grow it in low light conditions, the leaves will get very big and more tender. Basically, this is how the plant adapts to those different light conditions. It can also adapt to a wide range of watering regimens. If you grow it, for example, in full sunlight, this plant can also adapt to less frequent waterings. And if you grow this plant in a shady condition and give it a little bit more moisture, this plant can take a lot of water without rotting. So that is how I am growing it. It is in this clear plastic container and growing in 100% sphagnum moss. This way I can see the water level, and I just fill it up about 3/4 full with water or nutrient solution, and then the plant takes as much as it needs. And yeah, this is basically growing really well. Once this plant dries out, most of the foliage will die back, but in most cases this plant regrows really quickly. And if not, you have some seeds which you may have saved, and then you can just sprinkle them on top and they sprout really fast, and then you have a full head of plant again. The flowers come in different colors. They can be dark blue, dark violet, light violet, but I found that if I'm growing this plant in low light conditions, the flowers are very pale. Right now they look almost white, like a very pale lavender color, but I don't mind. The flowers are a bonus for me, but I'm not growing this plant for the flowers alone. I really like the foliage, and also a huge bonus, even in low light conditions, the underside of the leaves are purple. Of course, you get a more intense coloration when this plant is growing in high light conditions, but even in low light conditions, you get this really nice contrast between the front and the back side of the leaves, which I do really like. And even in the winter, when we don't have a lot of light coming through our bathroom window, I managed to grow this plant in the same spot. It doesn't look as luscious as it does in the summer, but it survives, and that's enough for me. So let's put you aside, don't rip you apart. So the next plant I want to talk about, it looks a little bit messy because I haven't cleaned the spent flowers in a while, but please do excuse this fact. This plant has a little backstory. I am really loving Pinguicula flowers, and I was on the hunt for a Pinguicula that blooms all all the time. I don't know if you have some experience with pinguiculas. They have a very specific blooming time. Some bloom in the spring, some bloom in the summer, some bloom in the fall, but there is not a single cultivar that I have found that blooms year round, except this one. This is Pinguicula cultivar Anna, and she is blooming all the time for me. She blooms non-stop, and I am really loving this about her. And a huge bonus for this Pinguicula is also that it stays really small. It is clump forming. You can see these were just a few plants. Now it is a full pot of small Pinguicula rosettes, and they shoot out those flowers even in low light condition. This is sitting on top of my orchid shelf. I actually have two pots. One is in a slightly higher light condition compared to the other one, but also the lower light Pinguicula is blooming exactly the same, so there's almost no difference. And I am really loving this plant because the coloration of these flowers is so intensely purple. It is just a joy, and I really love the height of the flower stalks, that it sits just on top of the foliage, and it's just so beautiful. It's so nice looking. Don't look at the spent flowers. Let's just call it a very natural display of Pinguicula Anna. This is also again in a clear glass container, so I can see the water level, although I cannot see anything right now because it is full of algae. And I grow it in 100% sphagnum moss, and I fertilize it the same way I do with my orchids at around 350 microsiemens. And this plant is very hungry for a Pinguicula. At least it stops blooming once it doesn't receive enough fertilizer, but other than that it is not fussy at all. If you have a reverse osmosis system or you have access to deionized water, fertilize it up to 350. You can also use 400 microsiemens, and this plant will just thrive for you. There's some very annoying construction going on outside. I hope you cannot hear this. If you can, I apologize in advance. Yeah, and the great thing about this plant is it stays this small. It puts out flowers all the time. Doesn't matter if it's summer, if it's winter, if it's warm, if it's cold, because in our living room it gets quite cold in the winter. But this plant doesn't mind, it doesn't care. It just puts out these flowers like nothing is happening, and it's just a joy to grow. It's super easy to propagate. You can take leaf cuttings, so single leaves, put them in sphagnum moss, fertilize it really well to 350 microsiemens. You can pluck out some little rosettes because this will grow full again in a matter of seconds, and you place those rosettes even if they don't have any roots into sphagnum moss, and they will root immediately. And this is just amazing. I created a second container. So this is a little tray. I put some rosettes from here in here, and you can see this is full again. I can take some rosettes from out here into another container and continue my propagation journey. And usually this is much fuller with flowers. You can see all the spent flowers. But yeah, this plant is really loving life and putting out all those flowers. And yeah, I really like that they move just like that. It's just so amazing, so beautiful. If you give them a little bit more space, this Pinguicula can grow a little bit wider. But if you don't plug out the rosettes and don't give them much space, they will just stay quite small like here. It's just a matter of what you like more. So the next plant I want to talk about is this one right here, Pellionia repens, and this is the variegated version. When I first saw this plant, I thought, wow, what an interesting looking begonia, but it is not a begonia, and it is not as fussy as any begonia I have encountered. So this is a really nice dupe for a begonia. If you are into leafy begonias, this is the plant to get, because unlike begonias, this plant doesn't break easily. It is not fussy when it comes to drying out. It becomes a little bit more droopy, as you can see, but I really love this growth. It's just so interesting. I don't own a plant which has this creeping kind of vibe to it and still has some own structure to it. So this is just looking so amazing. And the variegation is super interesting. When the leaves first come out, they have this minty lime vibe to them, and then the variegation fades to a completely clear white, which is super beautiful. And this variegation is not prone to drying out or crisping. If you see some crisping on the leaf tips, it's because I let it dry out for too long. But even this crisping on the top of the leaves is super minor, and you can just clip it away and then the plant looks fresh and new again. And I haven't taken any cuttings from this because I love how this plant looks right now, but I imagine that this will be very easy. Maybe I can spot some roots. No, I can't. This plant just looks so beautiful, and without anything, it sprouts also from the bottom of the older stems. It just keeps itself full and looking lush and beautiful. And I really love the color play between the old and the new leaves. It's just such a joy to watch it. If you love variegated plants and stable variegation, this is so amazing, so beautiful. And then you have those salmon looking stems, which just adds to the interest of this plant. It's just so beautiful. I have to put it on some kind of plant stand so it can droop a little bit more, because this looks so beautiful and so amazing. I really love this plant. It is standing quite far away from our kitchen window, which is a west-facing window. Yes, there's a lot of light, but even in winter, when there's not much light coming through this window, this plant is thriving and living its life, and it's not complaining. And I imagine that you can put it in even darker conditions and the variegation will be a little bit less, but other than that, this plant is not fussy at all. It will also love low light conditions. There is no doubt about that, because this is an understory plant and likes to creep on top of the substrate. So huge fan of this plant. It probably can also take much higher light conditions. I wouldn't put it in high intensity sunlight, because then the variegation might burn easily. But yeah, this is a really nice plant. Not fussy at all. I have to repot it because it's doing so great. Really amazed by this beautiful plant. Next plant I want to talk about is this Dendrobium baby Hibiki. You probably heard of Dendrobium Hibiki, which is rather fast growing and can take up some width and can also get a little bit higher. But this is actually Dendrobium Hibiki Lomeor crossed with Dendrobium levifolium fireball pink giant, and the result is this Dendrobium baby Hibiki, which is growing much slower, and it doesn't get as tall as the normal Dendrobium Hibiki, and also width-wise it is much more manageable. I know what I'm talking about because I had Dendrobium Hibiki and it was just growing so fast that I had to get rid of it, which was maybe not the smartest decision. Yeah, I like it much more because the flowers of this Dendrobium baby Hibiki are also much bigger compared to the normal Dendrobium Hibiki, and the clusters are about the same, and the flowering habit. And yeah, I just love Dendrobium Hibiki. It doesn't matter if it's the normal version or the small one, because they are so interesting to look at. You don't have these showy flowers which are sitting on top of the foliage. You really have to kind of sometimes look for them and search for them, because sometimes they're hidden underneath the foliage, and for me that's much more interesting compared to these really showy plants that display their flowers much more readily. And I also really love the foliage. If you give them a little bit more light, they have this intense purple coloration to them, and then you have these different colors in one plant. You also have these red purple stems, and the leaves that don't receive that much light are still green, which is a really nice color play, especially with those light pink flowers which have this orange, bright orange lip to them, and it's just so beautiful. It can take quite some highlight conditions, but I still grow it in the shelf with my Phalaenopsis, bulbs which receive about 100 to 150 micromoles of light intensity, and the same fertilizer as my Phalaenopsis at about 350 microsiemens. So this is really a very forgiving orchid. It can dry out. It is dry at the moment because this pot is rooted completely, and it's a very thirsty orchid, but I would say it's very beginner friendly because you have these pseudobulbs which will thrivel, and this is a clear sign that you have to water this plant. Even if you are not very knowledgeable when it comes to substrates and want to water orchids, this is a really nice plant because it tells you when it needs the water. So yeah, really beautiful plant. Flowers in the summertime when there are not many orchids flowering. So it's a really nice gap filler. No, that's a horrible name. It's not a gap filler. It's a really nice showstopper for me. And yeah, really loving this orchid. So the last and final plant type that stays really small are baby or mini Phalaenopsis. This is from Dresden Ostern, and I still haven't unpacked it because I don't have any time, but I will in the future, I promise, at some point. So please don't judge me. This particular type is Phalaenopsis Anna Socardi and the peloric type, but you can have so many different, also no ID Phalaenopsis, mini Phalaenopsis that you can find in garden centers and flower shops. A clear sign that they are mini Phalaenopsis is that they are sold in really small pots like this, for example. This is not always guaranteed that this is a mini Phalaenopsis. I have a feeling that this might be a bigger type, medium or even a large sized Phalaenopsis, and they just put a young Phalaenopsis in this little pot which was already able to flower, but it can grow much bigger than that. Sometimes this can happen, but then you can just give this plant away or sell it, I don't know, and try another mini Phalaenopsis, because still all Phalaenopsis need low light conditions, and with mini Phalaenopsis it's the same as with the big ones. You can have Phalaenopsis that flower in the winter time, you can have Phalaenopsis that flower in the summertime, and then you can fill your whole year with Phalaenopsis flowers in the best case scenario. I'm still trying to find Phalaenopsis that bloom year-round. Like the white one behind me is a winner for me because I found it for €1.50 at the IKEA clearance, and it is basically putting out flowers all the time. It has no ID, so I cannot tell you what it is, but it looks like a very basic mini Phalaenopsis, but it puts out flowers all the time, and I really love that. And yeah, basic care for these mini Phalaenopsis, like for bigger ones, is also I grow them in 100% sphagnum moss, use reverse osmosis water which I fertilize, but other than that they are not fussy, they can dry out. These are much more manageable compared to bigger Phalaenopsis because they have thinner roots, they are smaller, they don't fill up the pot as quickly with their roots as the bigger ones. If you don't have much space or your collection is as big as mine and you have to water them all the time, I would recommend these mini Phalaenopsis because you can just have much more of them and they are just looking amazing. You can have different flower types, some are fragrant, this one is not. There is a mini Phalaenopsis for everyone, I think. If you are into orchids but you don't have much space, look out for mini Phalaenopsis because they are really amazing. So that was already it for 5 small plants, a low light edition. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to this channel, and I hope I will see you in the next video. Bye!